In March 1973, working steam on the New South Wales Government Railway was withdrawn, with Garrett Locomotive 6042 making the honours with hauling the last steam-hauled freight train in the Newcastle area. Working steam-hauled passenger trains for the New South Wales Government Railway had ceased in 1971. 6042 would later be placed on display at the now defunct Lachlan Vintage Village in Forbes, New South Wales, and was then sold to the Dorrigo Steam Railway and Museum at auction in the 1980s. But it still resides at Forbes today, sadly dilapidated from years of exposure to the natural elements of Mother Nature. But while steam on the New South Wales Government Railway had ceased to be, there was one railway, under private ownership, still running some tank engines hauling coal trains along the coalfields near Maitland. This was the South Maitland Railway Proprietary Limited, which was established back in 1893 when the first section of line was opened to East Greta to serve the colliery over there. Over the years, the line was extended to other collieries, with the addition of running their own passenger services from 1902 until 1972. The most well-known locos running the line were the South Maitland Railway 10 class fleet. 14 of these locomotives were built by Bear Peacock & Co. between 1911 to 1925. These engines ran on the line until steam was withdrawn from service in June 1983, with number 31 bringing in the last load with number 22 with a van in tow. Coal operations were then handed over to the State Rail Authority of New South Wales. All 14 of these engines are preserved today. 4 of the 14 10-class locomotives then worked on the shortened J&A Brown Railway from Stockrington and Hexham, making it the only working steam railway in Australia, which received much media attention. The other 10-class engines were in storage at East Greta, with the exception of number 19, who was placed on display on a plinth at the Port Waratah coal loader until it was donated to the Richmond Vale Railway Museum in 2009. Sadly, Coal and Allied announced in September 1987 that the line will soon close and coal haulage will be transferred by road instead, which led to protests using SMR number 25 and private cars from the mine staff, using them as a blockade towards the entrance to the loader at Hexham for the coal trucks. Local residents joined in due to criticism of increased road haulage. New South Wales Police were later called in. Management from Coal and Allied had asked the staff to move their cars and return the engine, but refused, and all 8 of the staff were sacked immediately, with termination benefits withdrawn. After requests from senior police, the cars were removed, but refused to return number 25 back to its shed and stayed with the engine. The men discussed further action, and the next day SMR number 25 was moved to Lennigan's Drive, a strategic location for the passing traffic to view the locomotive and the protesters. Ironically, coal trucks from Stockrington also used the road as well. Passing motorists had signed a petition made by the crew, while SMR number 25 was kept being attended to during the 3 weeks of protest, as it was still in steam, with coal delivered by truck ironically, and water being pumped down from a nearby swamp. The protest had gained media attention, but had failed to gain support from fellow unionists around the Hunter Valley. Management of CNA were critical of the commandeering of the engine, and was aware of the publicity of the protest, and were open to discussion with the men, but only after the engine was returned to Hexham. At first the offer was rejected, but finally on October 15, 1987, the men held a meeting and decided to return number 25 to Hexham, marking it the end of steam on the Richmond Vale line. After meetings with management, the men who took part of the protest had their severance pay and entitlements returned, but the line was still going to be closed. But a year prior to the closure, a special event was established in Maitland. 3 years after the cessation of steam on the SMR, it had evoked nostalgia towards people who remembered the steam era fondly, and had prevailed sentiment that such an important piece of the Hunter Valley's industrial heritage must be preserved for future generations. This became to be the ever-popular Hunter Valley Steamfest. The concept of the festival was made under the efforts of the National Trust of Australia, the State Rail Authority of New South Wales, and the New South Wales Heritage Office. It ran between the 19th to the 20th of April 1986 as a grand finale for Heritage Week 1986, with locomotives 3001, 3642, 5917 and 5910 in attendance. South Maitland Railway No. 25 also attended as a display piece. However, 6 months prior to the event, a souvenir hunter stole the numerals of the engines as front. It was lucky that the hunter has a knowledge of steam trains, according to SMR manager John McIntyre, as the numbers weren't screwed and the screws were placed back in. If they had not been replaced, the vacuum in the locomotive's smoke box and the loco itself will not work properly. The event was considered a success, and the organisers agreed to make it a yearly festival. Over 35 years later, it still continues to thrive, bringing in more visitors from not just Australia, but the world as well each year until 2020, when COVID-19 had become a worldwide pandemic, cancelling and postponing events to slow the spread, including Steamfest. There were plans for its comeback in April 2021, but was postponed later in September 2021 due to COVID regulations. But then September's dates were later cancelled due to the second lockdown New South Wales had to endure the Delta variant of COVID spreading across the state. There were plans to have it in April 2022, but the line from Thirlmere to Picton had been damaged due to the massive rainstorms that New South Wales had faced, trapping 3801 and 6029 at their base, the New South Wales Rail Museum in Thirlmere. Thankfully, it was later repaired by the Australian Rail Track Corporation, ARTC, who are one of the sponsors for the Steamfest, so the event was moved to July 2022. But that ended being cancelled due to another massive rain event that had damaged the local infrastructure in the Hunter Valley, including the railway due to the flooding. But, after 4 years of waiting, the long-awaited 35th anniversary celebrations of the Hunter Valley Steamfest is finally here for 2023, and we start off the celebratory year with a container train for Pacific National on Friday, April 28, 2023, before we see 3801 pulling in at Maitland Station with a Steamfest flyer, with passengers from Concord West and Sydney's Inner West. The locomotive was running behind schedule due to an emergency network repair from Sydney Trains earlier in the day. At last, 3801 arrived at Maitland with its passengers. The 3801 had been a regular at the Steamfest from 1987 to 2007, with the exception of Steamfest in 1988 due to its trip to Perth, Western Australia as the bicentennial train, and Steamfest 1999 due to an overhaul for its commitments for the year 2000. With passengers off board, 3801 now shuts itself into Maitland Yard. Later, we moved to the yards to see 6029 pulling in with the empty carriages from Thelmere. Before we see the Garratt, a Genesee Wyoming Australia coal train can be seen passing through. This is a common sight in the Hunter Valley, as it is coal country. Finally, 6029 has arrived with its carriages. As 6029 awaits for its path to be placed in the yards, another coal train can be seen passing by. Then we see a Hunter rail car passing by, taking commuters to Newcastle Interchange. These were built by UGL Rail between 2006 to 2007 to replace the aging 1961 600-700 rail cars that were in service until 2007. "6029 now has a clear path and will pull into the station ready to be shunted. The steel carriages in the Garratt's consist are from the Southern Aurora set based at the New South Wales Rail Museum in Thelmere. The carriages were used as accommodation for the Transport Heritage New South Wales volunteers for the weekend. Freshly overhauled 4916 is seen at the back of the train, along with 4201 and 4501. 4201 and 4501 will be assisting the various trains during Steamfest. The two engines now rest in the siding, getting ready for a steam-filled weekend.
The train now approaching platform number 1. is the Garrett, departing Maitland at 9:56, heading into Newcastle.
Day 1 of the Steamfest had started on Saturday, April 29th, 2023, with 4501 leading 6029 into Maitland Station after a trip to Paterson. The pictures on the station platform have been updated. These were part of a photo competition made by the Steamfest in 2022.
Steam engine approaches platform number 1.
4501 will now lead 6029's next train, which is a one-way trip for passengers to Newcastle Interchange. Next we see 4201 pulling in with 3801 from its first trip to Branxton. Meanwhile, CPH Rail Motor 1, 3 and 7 from the Rail Motor Society are seen pulling into the station as well from Paterson, which is where the society is based. We hop on board 3801 as it pulls out of Maitland to Branxton. Steamfest is not just devoted to steam locomotives. It is also devoted to historic steam traction engines, steam lorries and vehicles, as seen here at the rally ground. Meanwhile, South Maitland Railway 10 and 18 are seen on display nearby the rally ground. These engines are owned by the 10 Class Locomotive Limited, and if you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, visit their website, 10classlocos.com.au. Let's take a ride on 3801 as it thunders through the countryside heading towards Branxton. Back in the days of working steam, many 38 class locomotives were a common sight in the Hunter Valley whenever they pulled the Brisbane Limited. The first run happened on July 18, 1944, with Streamline 3804 to South Brisbane. But the class was banned from servicing on the line due to track condition after derailment involving non-Streamline 38 class loco 3817 on August 19, 1948 at Rocky Pond. The cause of it was by a broken rail. The accident killed 4 people and injured 19. 3817 was later repaired, but would be called the Voodoo engine as it was involved in 2 other major accidents, one in 1959 and another in 1963, which was the same year when it was withdrawn from service, since the accident it was involved in that year was deemed uneconomical. 3801 had visited Brisbane in its preservation career in 1988 for the bicentennial, 1989 with Flying Scotsman as an assistant engine, and 1993 for its 50th anniversary. We arrive at Branxton. 4201 will now lead the train back to Maitland once again. A little something for diesel fans who are watching. We return to Maitland, and we see 6029 getting ready to depart Maitland for its second trip to Paterson after its return journey from Newcastle Interchange. Later, 3801 departs Maitland, seen from the rally ground, for its third trip to Branxton once again. One of the traction engines on display at the rally ground. We'll return to the rally ground later on in the video. R766 finally makes its debut at Steamfest after being converted to standard gauge. It's also the second non-New South Wales steam locomotive to attend Steamfest since Flying Scotsman during the famous British Locomotives extended visit to Australia in 1989. It was here in Maitland in 2022 that R766 was relaunched for picnic train services. We'd like to point out an error from our March special edition about R766. The last time it worked with 3801 was back as a broad gauge engine in Victoria in 1993, when 3801 made a trip to the state for its 50th anniversary during the Easter long weekend. The two locomotives ran a triple parallel run with K183. We'd like to thank YouTube user Bradley Bowen for the correction. The R-Class engine will be making a trip to Port Waratah. This is its second journey for the day. With Saturday nearly drawing to an end, CPH rail motor number 1, 3 and 7 are seen pulling into Maitland from their last run to Paterson for the day. These rail motors were built a century ago back in 1923, and were made to make branch lines more economical by reducing operational costs. Later, 4201 is now seen leading 3801 in its last train from Paterson for the day as well. Later in the evening, 3801 will be placed on display in the station as part of Steamfest After Dark. After that, 3801 is seen pulling in on platform 1, ready to enter Maitland Yard to be serviced before being on display for Steamfest after dark. After that, we see R766 arriving back with its third and final train from Port Waratah for the day. With its passengers now off the train, the Hudson R-Class engine and its train will now settle for the night. Night has fallen, and 3801 is seen pulling into Maitland ready to be on display for Steamfest after dark. As the carnival entertains its patrons nearby the station, 3801 stands beautifully at night while its fans takes its pictures. "3801 is like an old film star, and where the paparazzi?" This concludes Saturday's event. It isn't a trip to Steamfest without a visit to the Richmond Vale Railway Museum in Kurri on Saturday, April 29th, 2023. One of the things on display during our visit was the too much Thomas the Tank Engine layout, filled with battery-operated trains from the likes of Tomy and Trackmaster. Some items on display were exclusive to Japan. The Homer Playrail Tomy, which created the Thomas toy line since 1992, and is still being sold there today. It was sold in the West, including Australia, in 1998, until it was replaced by Trackmaster from Hit Toy Company in 2007. There are references from other franchises on the layout, such as Disney Pixar's Cars, Theodore Tugboat, Bob the Builder, and Tugs, a sadly short-lived children's television show from 1989 that was created by the producers of Thomas the Tank Engine from Clearwater Productions, who had filmed the first 2 seasons of the latter before it was closed down in 1990. There was even a reference to the Thomas episode Diesel Does It Again, where Diesel pushed the trucks into the water at the harbour. The layout is often displayed at the museum, and you can find them at @TooMuchTTTE on Twitter for updates. The museum also housed other models and other things on display associated with railways. There's also a small display of merchandise and pictures devoted to AP Films, which is famous for its creation of British television shows such as Thunderbirds, created by the late Gary Anderson and late Sylvia Anderson. After our look, we now move to the manager's office, which stands proudly near the station, showcasing the history of the mines once owned by J&A Brown. Although nowadays coal is not a really popular substance for power, The museum is a nice reminder of our coaling industry and what the miners went through to make an honest living for themselves and their families. Now it's time for our train ride. Usually it'll be steam-hauled, but with no available steam crew for the museum's Marjorie tank engine on Saturday, X200 class diesel locomotive X217 of the Mark II series was doing shuttle runs on the Mulberry Road branch. The locomotive was built in 1968 by Chullora Railway Workshops for the New South Wales Government Railways. The driver was blowing the horn to indicate to the guard that there are some passengers who want to have a ride on the locomotive. The carriages were still spruced up with some Christmas decorations from their last Santa special. If you ever get a chance to visit the Hunter Valley, whether it's for Steamfest or just a weekend getaway, make sure you come down to the Richmond Vale Railway Museum.
Train now arriving on platform number 1 is steam engine R766.
The final day of Steamfest 2023 was on Sunday, April 30th, and today is the centerpiece of the festival, which is the fully booked out great train race from Waratah to Maitland. To mark the Steamfest's belated 35th anniversary, the race would be another quadruple run, with 3801, 6029, 5917, and R766. The last time a quad race happened was back in 2016 for the festival's 25th anniversary, which can be seen in our May 2016 special edition. R766 pulls into Maitland Station to collect its passengers for the race. The R-Class will depart its way to Port Waratah to turn round on the loop. 5917 had left Maitland earlier with its passengers for the race. CBH Rail Motor number 1, 3 and 7 are now back at Maitland Station to get ready to take its Sunday passengers to Paterson. .3801 now pulls in to collect its passengers ready for the race. "4201 will be leading the train to the starting point at Waratah. The locomotive hauling us this year will be 6029, which is seen pulling into the station to collect its booked passengers.
Train now arrives on platform number 2 is the late running 909 service to Talara.
4501 will be leading the train to the starting position. As we make our way, we travel through beautiful landscape of the Hunter Valley. At Waratah, all 4 engines are together for the race and were lined up for NBN News. NBN stands for Newcastle Broadcasting New South Wales, that will be later broadcasted that evening. And now, the race is on, with 3 New South Wales steam locomotives versus a Victorian steam locomotive. A state of origin race. 3801 was the first engine to pull into Maitland Station. Our loco, 6029, was the second to pull in due to us occupying the line that is reserved for coal and freight trains, and of course they are a priority. .3801 was declared the winner of the race, and is standing proudly alongside 6029, both collecting passengers for their next trains. R766 now pulls into Maitland Station, and will be getting ready with its first trip to Port Waratah. R766 will now be making its way to Port Waratah. We say farewell to R766, and now we'll see 4501 pulling 6029 on their way to Newcastle Interchange. .3801 will be making its way to Branxton. We now move to the rally ground, and let's take a look at the historic vehicles and machinery that are on display by various preservation groups. One of the popular attractions at the rally is this car dressed as Thomas the Tank Engine called Tom 1, an appropriate item for Steamfest. The car is used for Variety Bash, where a group of people take 30-plus-year-old cars to places around Australia in support of the Variety Children charity. We once again see South Maitland Railway 10 and 18, this time from the rally ground. A Stanley steamer is seen on display near the shed at the rally ground. We take a last look at CPH Rail Motor 1, 3 and 7 heading off to Paterson. (4201) is seen leading 3801 back into Maitland from one of its trips to Branxton. We take a last look at 6029 passing up the historic traction engines from the rally ground as it makes its way to Paterson. The Garrett locomotive will be making its journey home to Thelmere with the carriages on Monday, May 1st. Later, 3801 leaves Maitland on another journey towards Branxton. Our final stop for Steamfest 2023 is at Locomotive, where we see 5917 storming through on its way to Singleton. (5917) along with R766 will stay in the Hunter Valley doing trips for the locals during the months of May and June. To conclude our May special edition, 3801 is seen passing through heading towards Branxton in beautiful autumn sunshine. 3801 will head back to Concord West with its passengers, and then to its home base at Thelmere on Monday, May 1st. It was well worth the 4 years to see Steamfest running again, and Rail Around New South Wales would like to thank all the volunteers from Transport Heritage New South Wales, the Picnic Train and Maitland City Council, as well as rail staff from New South Wales Trainlink who had made the 2 days possible, and we are looking forward to seeing next year's Steamfest in 2024.